So talk through really in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, but there's a foundational like mindset of service for you.
Yes.
Like I want to be able to make people's lives better or help people make their own lives better.
Right.
So walk us through 2010 and kind of really how that laid the
Yep.
foundation for the purpose for your transition out of football.
Right. All right. Yeah. I think, man. So the goal is to understand your purpose and find your purpose, right? And to live a purpose-filled life. And so it takes time. It's tough, but you gotta fight your butt off to figure out what that is. Because once you do that, man, life is so much smoother and easier. It's like rewarding. I wouldn't say smoother and easier. It's just rewarding. Understanding that you're making the world better. You're making the community around you better. So go back to 2010, 2011. My life was a living hell, right? And part of the reason why is because my identity was wrapped up in the game. I didn't know how to control my emotions because it wasn't about the business. It was more personal for me. It's like, man, you're taking food off my table, whether it's a player on my team, a player on another team, a general manager, a coach, a owner, didn't matter, right? And I didn't understand how to control my emotions. I didn't understand how to communicate. I didn't know how to operate within a team, function within a team, right? And even off the field is the same thing. My interpersonal relationships, a living hell, right? So 2011, I'm playing for the Miami Dolphins, just traded from the Denver Broncos, and I just couldn't control my tone. I would go in there, I'm like, man, I'm mature enough. I'm tired of arguing and bickering with teammates or coaches, media talking about me. I'm just going to just come in, do my job, and not say anything. And it was a game, and I knew the coach was going to say something terrible, and the guy said something. I just went off.
Were you in the locker room at this time?
No, we were in
After the
a
game.
meeting room.
Oh, in the meeting room.
This is the Monday.
The
So
Monday,
we played
okay.
Sunday.
All right.
This is Monday. Now we're
Okay.
reviewing film. Okay, we're going through Sunday. Okay, and so I came in. I said, I'm not going to say anything. I know it's going to be something, but I'm not going to say anything because I don't want it to go left. Right? I end up saying something, and I just remember going in the bathroom like, oh my goodness, like I can't control myself. Right? And I went to Ricky Williams and I said, Ricky, do you think I'm bipolar? And Ricky said, no, Brandon. This is Ricky's voice. He said, no, Brandon, I don't think you're bipolar. I just think you say all the things that we want to say but shouldn't say. And the reason why that was important because I just got to Miami. Remember, Run, Ricky, Run just came out the year before that. I think that was 2010. So Run, Ricky, Run just came out. That's a 30 for 30 on Ricky Williams and on ESPN. Now, in that film, Ricky Williams, it highlights it. It shows. I mean, they're showing this journey that he was on. This is Ricky Williams. Just signed a huge deal, millions of dollars. He left that on the table, went to Australia, living in a tent. But there was a moment, right, where I went to his premiere. I'm dressed in a nice little suit. My wife is with me, right, and I'm sitting there in this beautiful theater. And then halfway through the doc, Ricky left like Australia, went to McLean Hospital, and he's sitting down with this guy. This guy is Dr. Gunderson. I'm like, dang, I know that guy, right? And so now we're looking at his journey at McLean Hospital, and now he's introducing mental health, this conversation of mental health. And I'm like, I know that guy. And I left, and I just kept thinking, I know that guy. Well, that was the guy the NFL sent me to 2 years before. I just flew out to Waltham, Massachusetts for an hour. I flew into town, and I sat down with him, and we just had a conversation, and that was it. And I left. So a couple years later, I'm looking at, was that the guy that helped Ricky Williams? Maybe that's the guy that can help me, So that offseason, I ended up flying out to, Waltham, Massachusetts, McLean Hospital, number 2 psychiatric hospital in the entire world. And I would go out there once a month. Right? And then halfway through, he's like, Brent, I think you need a more intense program. He said, I think you need to stay out here. And I stayed out there for 3 months, and it was like college campus for me, 9 to 5. I was on campus. I was in self-assessment. I was in dialectical behavior therapy. I was in mentalization therapy. I was in cognitive behavior therapy. I did a clinical evaluation the first day. I did a neurological evaluation the first day. Like it was one of the most phenomenal experiences I've ever had. Within 3 months, my life totally transformed. Before that, I gave my life to Christ, but things were still happening, right? And then it wasn't until I actually sat down and did the work, and then it was like, oh, and then God just started really showing up in a radical way for me. So that's when, things changed for me, and now I'm sitting here living a purpose-filled life. Like, it's like everything I do, even on the media side, House of Athletes side, is only to push to this one thing. Like, my goal is to give away $400 million to the mental health community. And that was because, like, big corporations and companies, I'm like, man, do you see what's happening in the mental health space? Like, people need help.
Yeah.
And I was like, we need help over here. And nobody would fund it. I was like, well, all right, what the hell? I'll just go make my own money.
Yeah.
How much of that has to do with receptivity and your willingness in that moment to say, this is something that I need to change? Had you maybe gone through that 2, 3, 4 years earlier, maybe the results are different. Right. So for you, how much of that was played into it of, no, this is something that needs to change for me?
Oh, man, it was everything. That it starts with that. If you're out there and you're struggling, or if you know of someone that's struggling, the only way to get through it is if you look yourself in the mirror. If that person looks himself in the mirror and says, I want this. That's it. You can't be Actually, when I was there for 3 months. The first month and a half, to the T, I was resistant. I was pushing. It was everybody else's fault. And then it wasn't until he hates when I tell this story, but there was the first time he talked to me like this. My therapist talked to me as if as if he was my coach. And he was like, why is it everybody else's fault? It's everybody else's fault. Like, man, I'm thinking, you supposed to listen to me. I'm supposed to land on the couch.
I'm on the couch.
Yeah, right. I got my feet up. Like, that's what they do in the movies. Like,
where did you go to school?
And he was like, control what you can control. Everybody else's fault. And then it clicked for me, right? And I don't know if it was because that's what I was used to and I was trained that way. Someone, on me and intense and just no beating around the bush. But that's when it clicked. And then in the second half is when I just start taking off, man. I would start reading more. I start leaning into all the material. And you have to be receptive to it. That's the only way. That's why you see a lot of these guys, you can sit down with them right away and be like, oh, they're not ready.
Right.
Because you can hear it, the language. You got to be ready.
And that's my favorite thing about you and listening to all your shows and your interviews is how insightful you are and how what's internal, you internalize things. You know yourself really, really well. And I'm guessing that's been a long, slow process over time. Were you always like that? Were you always an insightful person? And you just didn't know how to manifest it?
Yeah.
Or is that something you've had to work at over the years?
I think it was probably the first part, not being able to manifest it. Because, as an athlete, we're always inside of our own heads and feeling like where are we at today, and it's like, how do you channel that? I didn't know how to do that. And I was a product of my environment. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My town, East Liberty, is the poorest town in all of Pennsylvania. It's a couple miles out from, back in the day, Three River Stadium. Three River Stadium is Heinz now, right? Yeah. But that's the north side downtown. But over there, I got people that's never been to downtown Pittsburgh, and it's only a couple miles away. And so when you think about that neighborhood, man, it run down. My father was a drug dealer. There's a lot of crime. So I grew up with that mentality. In our neighborhoods, we're raised and taught and molded to survive, not thrive. Right. And part of the survival modes is that's a call for help. Yeah. That's like, screaming. No, what's wrong? Yeah. Talk about your emotions. You hurt my feelings. We're not gonna say that in the hood. Yeah. If I say that in the hood, man, I could get beat up. So you hurt my feelings. Oh, we hurt Brandon.
You back down.
Well,
here we go. Yeah.
Right.
Well, not only can you say that in your neighborhood, you can't say that on the field either, in the locker room. So everywhere you go, there's no outlet for this.
People thought I was so weird when I got back. Even Jay Cut. I was with Jay Cutler the first 4 years in Denver. And he saw the young B, the immature B, the problem B. And then when we regrouped in Chicago, Jay was just sitting back. I was in Bible study. I was like, hey guys, I want to come to Bible study. No, don't talk like that. Here's difficult conversations. And they was like, man, this ain't real. You know what I mean? It's like, this ain't real. I don't know what this Brandon Marshall
is.
That's
opposite of Jay, right? Jay is just like this, right?
Yeah.
I ain't showing anything.
Right.
But what I love, though, man, is the courage. And maybe it took those 3 months going through just intense focus on yourself. But, man, the courage to step out, because in sports, all of sports, right? People may have talked about it, like the Ricky Williams documentary. It was kind of like, okay, we'll sprinkle a little bit of it here, a little bit there. Yeah. But someone to really just come out and just be a champion for it, no one had done that.
Yeah.
No one had normalized the conversation around mental health. And then really when you were in Chicago and started the foundation, man, and getting it out there and using the platform to say, hey, look, we have to talk about this.
Right,
Yes,
right,
you may
right.
think we're gladiators on the field, man, but we're little kids at home and in our mind. Like, we've got a lot of maturing to do because, like Ben said, on the field, you have to be a gladiator to the dude next to you. Like, you've got to show when you can be a team and you can be transparent, you can be authentic and say, hey, man, I'm struggling with this. Then that's when, dude, think about
that's
tight
when the
knit.
team, that's when it happens.
The team becomes that.
Right.
Or you do a ton of drugs and stuff like that, like
Talking
they did
about
in
the
the 90s.
Cowboy
Yeah,
House?
talking about the
Hey,
All good. White House.
one of the two. There's two options.
But you listen,
But they were together.
They were doing it together.
we did it all together, man. But hey, listen, I was at ESPN at the time when you were going through this transition. So and I didn't know you personally, Brandon. So you were disruptive to the sports world altogether.
Right.
Because what we knew at ESPN and everyone that was broadcasting and the games and all was this dude's a superstar, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how superstars are, they act a certain way.
Right.
So when you went through this transition of this guy that was volatile, and then he came back, and I said the same thing. When you went to Chicago, I was like, who is this? I'm on this set going, I don't know him.
Right.
I don't know who this dude is because he's in front of the camera. He's talking a little different. He's slick.
Right.
Pittsburgh kid. He's slick. He's got an agenda. But
Right.
things change, and you brought it to light, man.
Right.
And I'm so proud to be sitting here next to you, man, because you were vulnerable at that time. You didn't care what the media was saying, whether it be ESPN, CBS, all the big networks. You brought it to light, and I think that was the first time I really saw it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now you're starting to see more players come out, man. So we appreciate you so much just for being vulnerable at that time.